Thank you so much for being here. I'm very happy to have you. Vivianne, if I can start, I already mentioned WWF. You might know them. At the core of the advocacy of the organization, of course, it's always been the protection of nature and biodiversity. Now we're here and we're talking about CCU and CCS. Can you maybe share with us how the topic came onto your agenda specifically?
I've been asked this a couple of times at this event, so we need to do more work on that. No. But of course, we see that the nature and the biodiversity crisis are very much interlinked, and the climate and biodiversity crisis. So nature stores a lot of carbon, over half of what we release. So, but nature is also compromised in many ways, so it cannot actually deliver that function for us in the way it should. So, and on the other hand, the climate crisis is also impacting natural processes, the oceans and so on. So we basically, for decades, WWF has been working on the climate and energy fields in all sectors that are affecting the climate crisis. And so if you work on, like in the industry field, or if you look at like climate solutions for industry, at some point you come to the CCS point. And I really want to say, we talk about CCS and CCU, I think a lot more than their share in the solution altogether. So I think it's really fitting today here at nearly the end of the conference we talk about this, because this is really like it's one of the like smaller parts of the solution. They're important, but it's all the other solutions that we have talked about in this conference are much more important to me. So I think it's fitting that it's at the end.
Wow, that's very symbolic. I don't know if that was intended by the organizers. I'm scanning for them.
I hope.
It's almost symbolic, right? It's like the last sort of thing that you sort of reach towards to do. Because that's you actually you tap into a good point. At the very beginning of the introduction of this session, I said complementary, not as a substitution to, because I think that's the risk sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
How do we deal with that risk? Because that's something, if I'm really honest, that's something that sometimes frightens me, or sometimes I'm a bit hesitant or distrustful, because I'm like, okay, as long as we don't use it to sort of divert away from the transition that also needs to happen towards renewables. How do you look at that?
Well, it can definitely be a distraction in the discussion. That's what I meant. We discussed about it a lot more than its share in the solution. It is an end-of-pipe technology, so the question is to keep the pipe, at which end it is to keep it very small, and we do that by actually decarbonizing industrial processes with other methods. So there's electrification, there's using green hydrogen, there is circularity, recycling, all these kinds of things that we have to actually really reduce CO2 from industry, but there is still some applications in industry, and notably that's the cement industry, the lime industry, that's some part of waste treatment.
The hard-to-abate sectors.
They are the so-called hard-to-abate sectors, and for those we need a small part in the solution that CCS can play. And so that's why we deal with that, but we are also very much aware of the risk. And one of the risks, I would say, is to apply CCS in the energy sector, where we do actually have other solutions. And I'm really happy that we've talked about renewables a lot here the last 2 days, because we don't really need CCS in the energy sector. This will, prolong fossil business models, and it will have a real risk then to be a real distraction from what we need to do and what we can do. So it's really important that we keep it to the sectors that are hard to abate.
Right. You bring that message here. We're here at the Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue. No better place to bring that message, might I add. Do you think the message is felt and embodied enough by the energy sector? The fact that CCS is specifically something that you think would be prudent for hard-to-abate industries and not per se the energy sector?
I think we have seen a lot of discussions, like coming from a German perspective, basically the acceptance for CCS is very much relying on it being applied only in these hard-to-abate sectors. Otherwise you will have, there's a lot of public outrage if there is actually a breach into the energy sector. We've had basically this, 10, 15 years ago, because there was an effort to put CCS on coal plants, and that was not happening because there's no public acceptance for that. So I think we need to get CCS technology rolling. This is important. So we need to make sure that we get also the acceptance for that. And then that means to keep it out of the energy sector. I think at least for Europe, for Germany, this is very important. And we also agreed to this as the world community at COP28, it was basically also laid down that it should be for hard-to-abate sectors.
Yeah, I like how you say that, because in a way, this sort of social acceptance, the public acceptance of it, so to say, is also a thing in it. Because oftentimes we talk also about climate tipping points, that's sort of the urgency-invoking background as to why we're trying to prevent this. But we have social tipping points as well. And I think that's the point where people say, okay, don't do it for coal plants because we know that that will delay things much
And don't do it
further.
for gas plants either.
Okay, fair, yeah. Good addition. But indeed, that's also something to keep in mind. I want to go in a different direction. I don't want to do the same thing where I'm like, oh, I'm so surprised that you guys did this, because I said it already on the CCS. But you did recently publish a position paper on carbon capture and utilization or storage. For the case of Germany, but you did it together with a lot of organizations. First off, the Federation of German Industries, the German Trade Union Federation, and the Nature and Biodiversity Conservation Union, I should say, correct? Mm-hmm. That is I'm not going to say a surprising set of partners, but how can you maybe just share with us how that came about? Because those are very different sectors that we're talking about.
A bit of an unusual alliance, that's true. But if you dive deep into, climate mitigation and what needs to be done, then you arrive obviously at conversations with, and then those sometimes hard conversations with the industry, with the unions. All these people are partners for us, and we've been talking with them for years. And we saw a real risk that the German carbon management strategy is not coming along. So that was our joint reaction to say we need this strategic approach. We don't just need CCS. We need a strategic approach. We need an approach to get the public involved. We need an approach that clearly rules out applications in the energy sector. And that's what we could agree on with these other partners. And that's what we put down in this paper. Unfortunately, the German government didn't hear us very well, but we're still trying to get it out of the energy sector again.
Maybe, as a final question, I always like to end on a note of specificity. I always choose words that are hard to pronounce. But you mentioned already a little bit what's in the paper, sort of the message that you're trying to bring across. If you could make that very concrete when it comes to sort of policy recommendations, also beyond Germany, because this is a global challenge that we have in transition that we need to make. What is sort of specific policy recommendations that you in this sort of coalition are striving to push forward?
I think the specific policy recommendation is that you need to embed applications like CCS in a general industrial strategy. You need a carbon management strategy within that industrial strategy. And you definitely need policies that incentivize industry to decarbonize and defossilize their processes in other ways than looking at CCS. And then for the rest, you need some kind of clear guidelines for how to apply CCS and CCU.
I like that. That's very clear, very, very straightforward. I think everybody got that right. Nobody forget. Vivianne, can I thank you so much? This was very insightful.